Tony, call roll.
Jimenez,
Present.
Perales, Dieppe.
Present. Perales is here as well.
Okay, Carrasco,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Esparza,
Here.
Arenas,
Here.
Foley,
Here.
Camus, Jones,
Here.
Liccardo.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're convening for a special meeting this morning of July 28th. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you're able to do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic which stands
one nation under God, liberty. Thank you, everyone. There's just one item on today's agenda. That's 3.1, which is consideration of a ballot measure to amend the city charter and implementing ordinance. I know there's been some supplemental memoranda submitted by the city attorney's office as well as city clerk's office. Ed or Tony, did you want to speak to those memoranda? Ed, I'm sorry, were you able to hear me? Oh. Ed Moran, are you able to hear? I think you may be on mute. Yeah, Ed, we're not hearing you right now. It looks like you're having a problem with your device.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm Ed Moran from the city attorney's office, and Mark Vandy is also here. Rick, unfortunately, will not be able to join us today. The supplemental memo that came out is simply a clarification of a footnote. So it was a typographical error in the footnote that was in the original one, and so there really is no substantive changes that are in the supplemental. We have provided a memo where Mark attempted to describe this quite complex ballot measure that we were directed to draft, and hopefully you were able to understand what we were attempting to do in that ballot measure. Mark is available here, and I want to give Mark a lot of kudos for the work that he did in the last couple of weeks. As you all know, there's quite a bit of provisions in this ballot measure, and I think Mark tried his best to get all of the directions into this measure. And Mark is available to start the presentation. And in light of the various memos that came out, we can give you the entire presentation that we had planned to give you this morning, which is about 20 minutes, or and simply be available to discuss. So Mark, if you want to start, please, and then we can just take direction from council.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is, as Ed said, Mark Bonney. I'm a deputy city attorney with the city attorney's office, and I am sharing my screen. So if anybody can't see it, please let me know. As Ed mentioned, we had prepared a presentation on what the proposed measure would do. And these were some of the key things that the measure would do. But in light of the memorandum and other items that have been discussed in the last couple of days, if you guys want me to continue with the presentation, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, I'm available to answer any questions that you may have about these particular items.
Mark, maybe I could suggest this. Clearly, we see the direction from many memoranda. The issue of moving the mayoral election certainly seems to be a live one still, as well as the revision to redistricting timelines. If there are other matters that any council member would like to hear Mark discuss, certainly could hear that as well. So let me just ask, I know that Councilmember Carrasco and Councilmember Esparza have their hands up, but I suspect they're not on this particular question. Let me ask if there are any council members who would like other items to be presented.
Mayor, you're asking about more information on the redistricting timeline, is that correct?
Yeah, he's going to make a presentation. The question is, do we need to present on everything or just specific topics?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I'd actually support hearing everything.
Okay. All right. Then why don't we hear everything?
Okay, sounds good then. All right, so the proposed measure that was submitted today does a few things. First, it transitions the mayoral elections to the presidential election beginning in 2024. It would grant new powers to the office of the mayor. It would implement campaign finance regulations similar to those under Government Code Section 84308. It would impose prohibitions on regulating lobbyists and city contractors, as well, consistent with council direction on June 6th to include this item if other ballot measures were going forward, changes to the size and composition of the Planning Commission, as well as a proposal brought forward by the City Attorney's Office related to redistricting and the timelines in the charter due to delays in the 2020 census. So with regard to the mayoral election, the proposed measure would amend the charter, sections 402, 500, and 1600, which deal with term limits as well as elections. And it would move the mayoral election to the presidential election cycle beginning in 2024 to be held every 4 years thereafter. And to accomplish this transition, there will be no mayoral election in 2022. And the term of the office of the mayor that began on January 1st, 2019 will be extended for 2 additional years. And the incumbent may serve until the end of 2024. And this was consistent with the council direction at the last meeting. In addition, the proposed measure would make a number of technical amendments to the charter to implement the new powers of the mayor, of the office of the mayor. But the material changes can be found in section 502, and these powers are phased in over time. First, the mayor would remain an at-large voting member of the council. And then beginning on January 1, 2021, if the measure were approved by the voters, the mayor would have the power to appoint and direct the city manager, as well as the power to direct department heads. The city manager would still appoint department heads, and the council's role in the appointment of those department heads would not change. And then beginning on July 1, 2023, the mayor would have the power to dismiss the city manager and department heads. Now, with regard to the appointment of the city manager, which again is effective January 1, 2021, under new section 502A, the mayor's appointment of the city manager would only take effect after the mayor had presented the appointment to the other members of the council at the next closed session meeting held in accordance with the Brown Act. And then the other members of the council in closed session could reject the appointment of the mayor, of the city manager by a vote of 7 members of the council. And if the council didn't reject the mayor's appointment of the city manager, then the appointment would take effect and the mayor would announce it on the same day. With regard to the authority to direct the city manager and department heads, under section 502B, that authority would be limited to just the city manager and department heads. The mayor would not be able to directly order publicly or privately any subordinate officer or employee. In addition, we included in the limitations of power that the mayor may not direct the city manager or department head to withhold information from members of the council unless required by law, or direct the city manager or department heads from minimizing the importance of material information shared with members of the council, or direct or otherwise use the city manager or department head to inquire about or solicit the vote of another member of the council outside of a public meeting. With regard to dismissal, again, this would go into effect July 1, 2023. Before dismissal could take effect, however, the mayor or city manager must promptly notify the other members of the council about the proposed dismissal and cause the matter to be heard at the next closed session meeting at least 72 hours following notification of said dismissal. At closed session, the council may reject the proposed dismissal by a vote of 7 members of the council. And if the council rejects the proposed dismissal, then that person won't be dismissed. This would be concurrent with any power that the city manager has to dismiss department heads, as well as otherwise disciplined department heads. And this provision for the council to weigh in on dismissal of department heads would apply whether the mayor or the city manager were the person who was doing the dismissing.
Mark, thank you for interrupting. I'm sorry for interrupting. I've been
No problem.
that there are translators that are available to assist residents who would like this information translated. I believe in Spanish and Vietnamese. I could be incorrect, but Tiffany, if you could introduce yourself and as well as our Spanish language translator as well. Tiffany, I'm sorry, you're on mute right now. I'm sorry to take this interruption. I just want to make sure that people are aware of the availability of translation services.
Okay, so let me tell you this one. Okay, Quy is working right now.
Huh. Okay. Tony, can you help us?
Yeah, I think there is a slight glitch with the interpretation. So we're working on that. But it is available for Spanish and Vietnamese. However, if you need Vietnamese translation, you actually need to select German.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So we're working on that, but they don't allow Vietnamese translation. They only allow German. I should have it ready to up within a couple minutes.
This is the problem with the Zoom software?
Yes, this is the first time we've used it. So I thought everything was set and going, but it's not. So we're working on it.
Okay. How will residents know if they have services available?
At the bottom of the screen, when they're viewing through Zoom, there's a button that says interpretation. They should be able to click that and select the language, and they'll go automatically into it. As soon as I have it up, I'll text Henry and let him know to tell you that it's all working.
And that information is in Spanish and Vietnamese.
Yeah, and I have a screen
says the interpreter.
Sorry. Yes. And then I have a language that was put up on the screen prior to the start of the meeting. So when we get it all up, I can share that screen and it has the instructions.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, this is Magdalena. Could maybe Lon just announce that in Vietnamese, and then one of us could announce it in Spanish?
Yeah, why don't we give that a shot? Councilor Diep, you mind jumping in and letting
So just to verify, if you want to use Zoom, you have to look at the bottom of the screen and press German for
Nếu mà
Vietnamese.
các anh chị muốn muốn nghe bằng tiếng Việt Nam thì các anh chị có thể sử dụng cái nút bấm cái chữ là lựa tiếng Đức, và các anh chị sẽ có thể nghe được thông dịch viên nói bằng tiếng Việt Nam. Cảm ơn rất nhiều.
Okay.
Y như bà đã nói đấy đó.
Councilor Diep, did that suffice?
Yes, that sufficed.
Okay, great. Councilmember Carrasco, thank you.
And to use Spanish, we press Spanish, right? There's no other code.
Yeah, that's correct.
And where's the button, Tony, just to be clear?
It's at the bottom of the screen.
At the bottom, where it says interpretation?
Yeah, you guys can see it on your screen as well.
Okay, great. Para los que necesitan interpretación en español, por favor, lo van a encontrar. Es un botoncito. Si ven en la pantalla hacia abajo, hay un botoncito que dice interpretación. Por favor, oprimen ese botoncito y allí van a poder conseguir la asistencia que necesitan. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, back to you.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize in advance to the interpreters if I'm moving quickly. Moving along, in the proposed measure, we had included in brackets language asking for clarification as to whether the council
Dĩ nhiên là
rejection
trong cái cuộc họp lần vừa rồi
would
chúng tôi
I'm
apply.
sorry,
đưa ra
Mark, if
tất
you could
cả
hold for a moment. Okay, I think she's on mute now. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would apply to the dismissal of the city manager's office, and Councilmember Camus submitted a memorandum indicating that was the intention with the memo that was adopted, with his memo that was adopted last week. The proposed measure, if it moved forward, would include language that the council would have an opportunity to reject a proposed dismissal of the city manager by a vote of 7 members. In addition, the proposed measure would amend Charter Section 804. It would make the Office of the City Clerk a department under the direction of the mayor and city manager effective January 1, 2021. City clerk would be appointed like a department head, and beginning July 1, 2023, the clerk could be dismissed by the mayor or city manager like a department head, subject to the rejection of the council by a 7-vote majority. And to clarify as well that if this measure went forward, then the city manager could be dismissed by the clerk could be dismissed by the city manager before July 1, 2023, like any other department head as well. The clerk, however, would retain its duties under the charter over city elections, records, publications of notices, oaths, etc. Those have not been changed. Other conforming changes that have been made to the proposed measure would be if the city manager were to fail to appoint an acting city manager, the mayor would have the authority to appoint one, and the vice mayor would continue to be elected by the council and serve as the vice mayor during the absence or inability of the mayor to discharge his or her duties. However, the proposed measure would not grant the vice mayor the power to appoint, direct, or dismiss the city manager or department head in the absence of the mayor. Now, in addition to the new powers granted to the office of the mayor, the proposed measure implements campaign finance measures similar to those modeled after Government Code Section 84308. And I'll refer to it as Section 84308 from here on out. And this section, to remind everyone, does not otherwise apply to elected members of a government agency when serving in that capacity. So what we've done here is incorporate it in such a way that it would apply to members of the city council. And in doing that, we've established under the charter a new section, Article 20, as well as an implementing ordinance to define the specific terms and establish the monetary limits set forward in Article, to further the requirements set forward in Article 20. The implementing ordinance could be enacted before the election to become operative if the measure passed, but repealed if it did not. Article 20 would allow the council to also amend the implementing ordinance to further the purposes of Article 20, facilitate the effective operation of the council or city government, or to comply with a lawful court order, and except when necessary to comply with a lawful court order, any change in the ordinance that would reduce an ethical standard would need to be adopted by a 2/3 vote of the council, which is similar to Charter Section 607 that applies that requirement to other reductions in ethical standards. This approach in implementing ordinance is similar to the implementation of campaign finance and ethics laws under the California Political Reform Act. Under the Political Reform Act, the state legislature cannot repeal it, but the law allows the legislature to amend it with a 2/3 vote of each house to further the purposes of the law, and the FPPC can also issue regulations for that same purpose. And this allows flexibility to address issues or unintended consequences in the future, and we recommend a similar approach here. So the new Article 20 imposes 2 distinct requirements, those similar after Section 84308. First, it would impose a contribution limit and a conflict of interest scheme related to campaign contributors that would apply when a license, permit, or other entitlement for use is pending. Now, and this is with regard to the contribution limit. And so the general rule here is that a council member would be prohibited from accepting, soliciting, or directing a contribution of more than $250 from any party or participant while a proceeding involving a license, permit, or other entitlement for use is pending before the city, and for 3 months following the date a final decision is rendered. Now, the Article 20 under the new charter would allow the council to increase this limit, this $250 limit, to provide for changes in the cost of living. And the prohibition or limit would apply whether the council member accepts the contribution for himself or herself, on behalf of another member of the council, on behalf of another candidate, or another committee like a ballot measure committee or political party committee. It would also apply if the council member running for a different office as well as re-election. It would limit solicitation, but solicitations wouldn't be would not apply to mass solicitations made over the internet in other forms of mass media to the general public. And presently, the contribution limit as set forth in the proposed measure would only apply to council members, not candidates for city office running for city council who are not yet on the council. And this is because Government Code Section 84308 only applies to officers of an agency. And the purpose of the conflict scheme, which I will discuss in a few minutes, is intended to restrict candidates who are not subject to this contribution limit, who then become council members and are faced with a decision involving one of their campaign contributors. If they accepted over $250, they would have to recuse themselves, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as an alternative, the council may consider extending this limit to candidates for city office or keeping it just applicable to members of the council. And this contribution limit, if the measure were to pass, would be in addition to the city's existing contribution limit of $600 to council members and $1,300 to the mayor currently, which applies to all contributors, as well as the temporal limit, which permits fundraising 180 days before the election and through the general, but would not allow it at any other time. Now, with respect to the conflict of interest scheme, and this is in addition to the contribution limit, the proposed measure would prohibit a council member, including the mayor, from participating in the making of, or in any way attempting to use his official position to influence a decision in a proceeding involving a license, permit, or other entitlement for use before the city if the member of the council willfully or knowingly received a contribution in the amount of $250 within the preceding 12 months. So that is quite a bit of a mouthful, but the idea behind this is to address situations where a council member or a candidate accepted more than $250 in campaign contributions, and then a couple of months later, maybe a permit application is filed, and that permit comes before the city, and the council member accepted money above $250, they would be required to recuse themselves. This prohibition is broad enough to cover any executive action by the mayor, and that gets at the in any way attempting to use his or her official position. But as with Government Code Section 84308, the conflict only comes into play if the contribution was received for the council member's own candidacy or a control committee. So it wouldn't come into play if the council member is fundraising for another candidate or a ballot measure committee. And in addition, Article 20 would allow the council to adjust this dollar limit to account for increases in the cost of living as well. So the implementing ordinance defines a number of the terms that are set forth in that general rule. The most important one, I would think, is when does it apply, and what is a license, permit, or other entitlement for use. And we borrowed the definition from Section 84308, and it would apply in decisions related to all business, professional, trade, and land use licenses and permits, as well as all contracts, other than those that are competitively bid, labor or personal employment contracts, and all franchises. But it would not apply in decisions or proceedings where general policy matters are involved or rules are made, where the interests affected are many and diverse, or where ministerial decisions are made where no discretion is exercised. Other similarities to Section 84308 include allowing a conflicted council member to participate in the proceeding if he or she returns a contribution within 30 days from the time he or she knew or should have known about the contribution, as well as methodologies for aggregating contributions among related business entities and persons, and disclosure requirements. Government Code Section 84308 requires both the affected party or participant and the officer of the agency to disclose whether a contribution above the limit was made or received. And I know the council discussed exploring the city attorney monitoring compliance and informing council members of potential conflicts. Such a role, however, may conflict with our duties to advise the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices and Enforcement Proceedings, which I'll touch on in a bit. And so as an alternative, we've proposed a disclosure requirement consistent with the framework established under Section 84308, which puts the onus of reporting on the parties and participants, as well as the council members. One way of assisting affected members is that agencies that are subject to this requirement will often require a disclosure statement be completed in bid proposals and permit applications, requiring parties to disclose their campaign contributions
Và dĩ nhiên rằng
for
là cũng như là
tracking.
tôi sẽ disclose tất cả, tức là chúng tôi
Okay, and moving on, with regard to enforcement, the proposed measure, as with other campaign and ethics violations, would grant the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices jurisdiction to hear complaints alleging violations of Article 20 and the implementing ordinance and assess civil penalties where appropriate. With other violations under Title 20, the default rule with penalties in the board is up to $5,000 for each violation, or 3 times the amount which was unlawfully contributed or received, whichever is greater, although the council may assess a different penalty scheme if it deems appropriate. One thing or one limitation in Article 20, however, is that the failure of any council member to comply with the conflict of interest provision will not affect the validity of any action taken or support an allegation or serve as a basis for a claim of potential or actual bias in a conflict. This limitation is recommended here because campaign contributions under the law do not generally create a bias or conflict of interest for elected officials, and it is protected speech under the First Amendment, and so it may not be recognized as a legitimate basis to reconsider or revoke a permit or license or terminate a contract that is issued or entered into by the city. And so the enforcement would be at the penalty level, directed at the actual member of council. In addition, Article 20 would not prevent a conflicted council member from participating in the decision if his or her participation is legally required. This is intended to address a scenario where the council cannot constitute a quorum because a majority of the council has a conflict in a particular matter. In addition to those campaign finance restrictions and regulations, Article 20 would also add additional regulations on lobbyists and city contractors, the first being no campaign contributions from registered lobbyists to candidates for city office. The proposed measure would also impose a requirement on lobbyists and city contractors of no gifts. And we've incorporated the definition of gift under the Political Reform Act, which includes exceptions. We've also created an exception for 501c3s. The reason for this is such organizations are already exempt from the lobbyist requirement, so they cannot be registered lobbyists under the municipal code. In addition, it would allow for acceptance of things like tickets to fundraisers hosted by nonprofits. 501c3s, however, would still be subject to the gift rules under the city's gift ordinance, so $50 or less unless an exception applies. It would also apply to city officials, which includes mayor, council, senior staff, as well as planning commissioners and appeals hearing board commissioners. Now, important considerations with this gift rule is no gifts means 0 gifts. So it would be a violation if a gift above even 1 cent were received or accepted, unless there's an exception that applies. In addition, there was some discussion at the last council meeting of what a direct beneficiary of a city contract is or would be. We defined it in the implementing ordinance as any person identified in a city contract as having a direct financial interest in the performance of a contract. So think subcontractors, consultants retained by a contractor, it might apply in this situation. In addition to those restrictions, Article 20 would also prohibit a registered or lobbyist or city contractor from serving on a board or commission within 2 years of lobbying activity or expiration or termination of a contract with the city. This is prospective, so current board members who would otherwise be prohibited under Article 20 can continue and finish their current term. The implementing ordinance, however, does create an exception for 501c3 nonprofits, government entities, and groups whose representation on a board or commission may be required by law. And the reason for this is that persons from certain groups are required by ordinance or state or federal law to have a seat on a board or commission. For example, the Work to Future Board the city's downtown parking board. By law, certain groups are required to have representation on those boards, and representatives of those boards may work for entities that have contracts with the city. Another question or point of direction for the council is whether or not this prohibition would apply to advisory bodies without decision-making authority. Advisory bodies, they're in some cases, there's a desire to have stakeholders sit on these advisory bodies and issue recommendations for council consideration. And these stakeholders may be registered lobbyists or city contractors. And so there may be a desire to exempt them from this particular requirement. In addition, the proposed measure would establish a blue ribbon commission to study the effectiveness of the above amendments. At the time that the proposed measure was drafted, the blue ribbon commission, the composition, as well as any other requirements, were not set out. The only requirement was that the report would be done by March of 2022. In addition, the proposed measure would amend Charter Section 1000 to increase the size and composition of the Planning Commission from 7 to 11 members, each appointed by a council district and one at-large member. And under the proposed measure, the 8th and 9th member would be appointed for a term ending June 30th, 2022, and the 10th and 11th member would be appointed for a term ending June 30th, 2024. And those members could be appointed in the regular course of business if the measure were to pass. With regard to redistricting, the city attorney brings us forward to address the issue of possible delays in the completion of the 2020 census caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So under the charter, the council is to appoint an advisory commission, and this advisory commission is to be appointed by February 1st, 2021, and it has 120 days from its appointment to hold at least 3 public hearings and issue recommendations to the council for redistricting. So 120 days from February 1, 2021 is June 1, 2021. The council, under the elections code, also under state law, has to hold at least 3 hearings of its own before it can adopt a redistricting ordinance. And our charter sets a deadline that the redistricting ordinance must be enacted no later than October 31st. So all of this assumes that the census will be timely. And under the federal law, the census is required to be delivered to the states on March 31st, 2021. So we would receive it by April 1st, 2021. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the census has issued a revised schedule via its website, projecting July 31st, 2021 as the last date it will deliver the redistricting counts to the states. There's also a few bills in Congress, one in the House and one in the Senate, to authorize this extension, which have not been passed yet. So it's not clear if the census will be done sooner, and a July 31st, 2021 delivery date would effectively nullify the advisory commission's role and result in a very short window to engage in the redistricting process to meet the October 31st deadline under the charter. So our proposed amendment that we've submitted would change the deadline for the advisory commission recommendations and the enactment of the redistricting ordinance to be 61 days and 213 days respectively from the last day that the census is supposed to be delivered by law to the states, or the last date that it's actually delivered to the states, whichever is later. And so this was done with the thought that if the census is on time, the original deadlines would apply, but if it's late, it would be extended accordingly. But this is just one option. The council can consider other means of addressing this potential issue. For example, if the census is late, the council could extend the deadlines by ordinance. We could write that into the charter as well. So we're looking for direction as to move forward on this. And with that, I'm going to, I haven't amended my points of clarification slide here, but I will say if the council does want to continue with the proposed measure, we need some direction with regard to whether the contribution limit should apply to all candidates, whether there should be an exception for lobbyists and contractors on advisory bodies, as well as options for timelines with regard to redistricting. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and open the floor to any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mark. We will come back to the council for questions in a moment. I will note that that issue about extending deadlines for the redistricting committee is not one simply it's come up because of the issues around this late census, but I know it's come up in past decades. I remember being there in 2010 when there was concern about whether there was enough time to get all that information from the census office. And so I think that's an important thing for us to do anyway, and allow some flexibility there. I know that Tony also submitted a memo. Tony, did you want to discuss your memo?
There's not much to discuss in my memo. It's just a breakdown of election costs. So the first ballot measure is approximately 1.7 million. It's $1,692,000. For the first ballot measure, any additional ballot measures are 629,000. So that's really all my supplemental was, is a breakdown of costs. And I have page breakdowns because depending on whether you allow rebuttals and arguments and full text versus a summary, the price does change.
Yes. And just to remind us what we have budgeted for measures this fall.
2.7 million. So we can afford about 2 ballot measures without having to come back for a mid-year adjustment.
Right. And if we were to limit, I know there's a argument, a response, and then potentially a rebuttal. If you limit rebuttals, does that help you get 3 in any way under the budget?
Well, a rebuttal is 2 pages. So it's 51,000 for both rebuttals total.
Yeah.
So you save $51,000 per ballot measure if you do not allow rebuttals.
Okay. So we'll look carefully at that. I think probably next week as we consider the other 2 measures as well, which are also slated for council consideration, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ed and Dave. One potentially on card rooms and one on IPA. Is that right?
You're correct, Mayor.
Okay.
And we have posted already those particular documents on the August 4th agenda. So those are potentially going. And also just want to clarify, I know there's been some questions as to how all of these items related and why did we put them all together. We did that for 2 reasons. One is we wanted to bring the issues before the council. And also, as Tony indicated, there is a cost for individual ballot measures. And so we wanted to combine ballot measures. Clearly, if you wanted to take one of these other issues and put it on a different ballot measure, you could. But this was primarily to give the council the opportunity to discuss these potential ballot measures and determine if you wanted to move forward with it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll note just for the record, Councilmember Foley's kind enough to join us despite having just endured very significant knee surgery. And so she's going to be turning her camera off from time to time, I know, to elevate that. But she will be with us, and I appreciate that she does keep her camera on throughout the meetings because I think that's important for the public to know that we are hearing them. Obviously, we do turn them off when we need to run to a restroom or whatever it might be, but I do encourage folks to keep their cameras on so the public knows that we are hearing them. Let's go to the public now.
Mayor,
Yeah.
if I could just
Yeah.
add on to that, thank you so much. It is very difficult for me to sit here, and I am someone who really strives to be on camera during the whole session, but I'm just not going to be able to. So I will be on and off, but I am sitting here listening as much as I possibly can. But I thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember, and I hope you feel better soon. Rapid recovery. So let's go to the public now. Mr. Conda, everyone has 2 minutes to speak. And I ask if you could unmute your device as I call your name, and then you'll be able to speak easily.
Mayor Liccardo and members of the San Jose City Council, I'm Richard Conda, Executive Director of the Asian Law Alliance. I fully support Councilmember Arenas' memo. The council must not move forward with the proposed ballot measure unless and until there are changes that ensure community involvement. The community must be able to participate in the shaping of the goals and objectives of the Charter Revision Commission. Charter amendments involving census delays, the Planning Commission composition, and the independent police auditor should be separate from the proposal to move the mayoral election to the presidential election cycle. We need a fair and open process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Soto.
Good morning, Chicano 5. Good morning, Mayor Liccardo. I'm actually disgusted with the fact that even a proposal would be considered to circumvent the democratic process at a time when we have the most COVID deaths on the east side of the city that you are the mayor of. This is your responsibility, Mayor Liccardo, to ensure that your people, you wanted to represent the city of San Jose, or start representing. And that's just not your buddies that are coming in, Gary Dillabo, Jay Paul, and Eric Hayden, coming in and exploiting my city. You're exploiting my city by using opportunity zones. Opportunity zones give these people that have the capital to exploit the poverty that has been generationally created in this city at the expense of the Mexicanos and the Campesinos in Salsipuedes. And you've got the audacity to use your legal language and your legalese to try to slip in under the radar and to circumvent the democratic process, which is a violation to me as a citizen. As a citizen of this country, you attempted to do that. And just in your attempt, that right there disgusts me. Okay, and I'm counting on Esparza, Arenas, Magdaleno Carrasco, Perales, and Jimenez. We're counting on you to do whatever it is within your power to challenge this and to ensure that we as a people are protected. And I will expect nothing less of you, and I will demand all of it from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
Good morning, all. I support Councilmember Arenas' memo and want to clarify a few things on different polls. There was an official poll sanctioned, I think it was FMC. It said that people do not want strong mayor. I've seen numerous polls, including one on Reddit. There are 278 votes and 198 do not want strong mayor. I think it's pretty clear that what our mayor is doing is leveraging his position in San Jose to ultimately find his next role. Maybe it's Dianne Feinstein's position, maybe it's something else. But a clear sign of this was him endorsing Bloomberg. Nobody would endorse Bloomberg knowing he's going to lose except for political favor. So I think it's important for us as a city and for you, city council, to put the community first. Let's not simply help a mayor that's trying to catapult himself into politics. Let's actually think of what the people want. And the people are very clearly saying they do not want strong mayor. On the topic of redlining and redistricting, I'd like to call out to everybody that Gardner neighborhood is the only neighborhood, excuse me, Gardner is the only neighborhood in the entire city of San Jose that lives on an island. So we do not have a single block next to us that is in our district. Gardner neighborhood is very clearly District 6. And if you want to see a redlining, look at Gardner neighborhood. We're not going to be silent this time. We're gonna go for what's right. Thank you.
Mr. Beekman, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I would like to thank yourselves for all the work and efforts that everyone went through to where we are at this time. Thanks. We have a real chance to now study the ideas of equity and really concentrate on that at this time. And it's just incredible to me that we can. So thank you. And with that good focus, that can, to set up the community charter process is great of you. The words of the first speaker, Richard Conda, I thought his words were great on the subject. That's exactly what we need to be doing with it. So good luck in those efforts. I have a major concern about the strong mayor in that I worry of the mayor creating direct power with redevelopment agencies. In the words of Sergio Jimenez in his questions at the July 1st council meeting to Councilperson Jones. That's a real issue for me, that I'm to have, for the strong mayor to have that direct channel to simply create, future, business stuff is not it's worrisome to me. I think the low-hanging fruit stuff is awesome. I think we can all work to agree on that, and that's part of the future of our unity, our community unity. But it's the business dealings that I don't think. I think the mayor has done a very good job in organizing the planning department as it is. How can we bring that forward in the future? That's my goal. How can we continue that tradition without forcing these strong mayor things so much that promote these business practices that may be really insulting? And so thank you for all your efforts, and it'll be a good process in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mason?
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, as a union representative of over 800 engineers, architects, and managers providing service to the City of San Jose, I want to thank you for your time this morning. One of the most fundamental elements of American democracy, as noted by Alexis de Tocqueville, is our community associations and institutions fostering civic engagement and participation. It is what keeps our democracy strong when they are strong and our democracy weak when they are weakened. The proposal to rush changes to the city charter and add additional powers to the mayor without engaging these community associations a little over a month ago was the wrong tactic to take, and we are happy to see both the mayor and vice mayor change course on this topic with their recent memos. This issue should have always been about strengthening citizen participation, and we are glad to see the fair elections elements of the ballot measure remain and support the proposed Blue Ribbon Committee to engage the community further in potential charter changes noted in Council Member Arenas' memo. We appreciate the work and words from our city employees and the San Jose community over the last month to ensure that we improve democratic participation in San Jose in mayoral elections going forward and engage the full San Jose community on other charter changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, we
Okay.
can. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm grateful that this process is being slowed down. I'd like to voice my support for Councilmember Arenas' memo. And I think it's important that the public's voice is truly incorporated when this comes back in 2020. I'd like to highlight something that I found troubling in the mayor's memo. And the section bolded "Uniting in Crisis." The first sentence reads, "In recent weeks, several organizations have urged that we slow the process of charter reforms designed to lead to a more effective, accountable, and representative government." The first sentence reads as if organizations were the only ones that voiced their opposition and ignores the hundreds of community members not affiliated with any organizations that wrote or called in. It affirms that our voices have little to no impact on the process and that we're being ignored by our representatives. Does our mayor lead for organizations, as he stated, for example, developers and unions, or does he represent the people? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morris?
Good morning, Mayor Liccardo and City Council members. My name is Stephanie Morris, and I'm a volunteer leader with Mothers Out Front Silicon Valley, formerly South Bay. Although our primary area of focus is climate justice, we recognize that we will not be able to advocate effectively for this cause, nor any of the other vital issues we face, if our government is not fully representational, transparent, equitable, and inclusive. We share each of the concerns that the League of Women Voters has expressed about the process that rushed forward a strong mayor proposal. We applaud Mayor Liccardo for listening to the community and proposing to delay the strong mayor proposal. It's vital that this process include robust community input, especially from underrepresented portions of our community, and a thorough consideration of the complex pros and cons of various city governance structures. Therefore, we agree with Mayor Liccardo's proposal to delay a charter revision proposal, and we appreciate Vice Mayor Jones's and Council Members Esparza and Carrasco's thoughtful recommendations. We urge you to adopt Council Member Arenas' recommendations, as in our judgment, they combine the best ideas of the previous ones and further specify significant community engagement to determine if and how our government structure should change. Finally, we applaud you for providing interpretation into Spanish at this meeting and urge you to continue to do so at all future council meetings, as well as include translation to Vietnamese. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Watts?
Thank you, Mayor Liccardo, and all the council members who are moving the city governance and campaign finance items from the ballot coming up in November. We strongly support this action. Thank you so much, as it authorizes an independent body of citizens to first evaluate alternatives and to assess intended and unintended consequences of such changes to the power structure and possible conflicts of interest, with input from all people involved, including the residents of San Jose. As the League of Women Voters, has stated before, we do not, however, want to restrict the Charter Review Commission to only look at a mayor-council form of government. While this indeed may be the outcome of an unrestricted investigation and one our organization may support, we strongly feel that the Commission should not be instructed which form of governance is desired. The independent Commission should be free to evaluate how the balance of power works in the administration of our city government today, and what changes to that balance would make our government more effective and efficient for the benefit of all residents. Thanks to all of you for your public service to all San Jose residents. It cannot be easy to address the many issues facing us today, and we encourage and applaud your cooperative efforts to work together to address the serious concerns people have about the health, safety, and future of their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Zendejas? Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. I just want to thank you, Mayor, for listening to your community, knowing that the majority of us don't support the strong mayor. I want to ask you to remove it completely. And I know that removing it right now is not a permanent decision, and I want to encourage you to please adopt Silvia Arenas' proposal, which makes a lot more sense. And I also want to speak about Chief Garcia, and I think you've heard about the case for Guadalupe Marin. She was dragged, she was hit, and this all happened while being recorded, and it's not okay that these police officers are being protected once again. We march, we walk against police brutality, and you said that this would be fixed and that there were going to be steps. We don't see a change. They're still deliberately doing this, and they think that they can get away with it, and we need accountability. We're asking you, Mayor, to step up and please ask Chief Garcia to fire these officers, because if that was your mom, if that was your sister, I'm sure as hell you guys would not accept this. And I'm really disappointed right now to have watched that video. It was disgusting and disturbing to see a police officer kick a mom in front of her kids and drag her. No one should ever be treated, regardless of the crime, like that here in San Jose. And I'm not proud to say that these police officers are from San Jose. It's embarrassing that it's all over the news. After we marched and you took an oath to make sure that this would never happen again. Please do something about it.
Thank you. Mr. Reese?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I really appreciate the positive momentum I feel that's coming out of Mayor Liccardo's memo and Councilmember Arenas' memo. And I think an important thing to do as soon as possible with the mayor's memo is to clarify 2A and whether the mayor is literally directing the Charter Review Commission to recommend the executive mayor strategy for San Jose. I think that's important to be clarified, and I think Councilmember Arenas' memo attempts to do that. For me, when I look at the fact that the council manager form of government was a historical reform movement to get away from the cronyism, nepotism, and patronage associated with executive management by the mayor, I think it's important that the Charter Review Commission have that discussion so that we understand if we can move ahead with an executive mayor without having the negative attributes that historically have been associated with the major American cities that have the executive management. Also, on the campaign reform measure, I didn't like it when the proponents for the directly elected mayor moving the mayor to the presidential year, we're using that as the bait or the hook to pass something that may be controversial. And I think we need to move ahead with campaign reform of finance immediately and not delay it to the Charter Review Commission, because I think that we may still have the issue where the executive mayor is unpopular and we'd be using the campaign reform finance mechanism as the hook to bring the electorate on to supporting something they may not fully understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferguson? Welcome. Mr. Ferguson, you still appear to be on mute.
Okay, there I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. I'm calling in today to support Council Member Arenas' memo, because the council shouldn't move forward with a proposed ballot measure unless the changes are done in a way that involves our community and a process that improves our democracy. The council should not take any other further actions today unless they include a process that the community can participate in and shape the goals or objectives of the Charter Revision Commission. Moving the election for the mayor to the presidential year is not given an automatic extension without having to run for an extra 2 years. Campaign finance reforms created in collaboration with this community. Considering the following charter amendments, redistricting, census delays, planning commission composition, and independent police audited items separately from the proposal to move the mayor election to the presidential cycle. Mayor, I'm sure when you were running for mayor, you would not have wanted to wait another 2 years for your opportunity to lead the city of San Jose. Be fair. Your term is almost up. You did what you did. Let's move on and let the next person take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica?
Great, thank you everyone. Good morning and happy to be back in sessions with all of you. I definitely consider as well that you should remove whatever that strong mayor and support Sylvia Arenas. As we have noticed, and we keep noticing that transparency that you have given us has not been transparent, right? Making your backdoor deals. And right now, really, instead of fighting for more power that you want to change things, why don't you actually do something with the power that you have, right? You took a knee down at the protest a couple months ago, right, with us while we were protesting police brutality, yet here in our own backyard, we are having police brutality. We're having a woman being dragged, okay, out of her car. And then again, it doesn't matter what she did or what she didn't do. Nobody should be done that. You more than anyone know that officer was very close to putting his knee on her neck. What could have been? Another, I can't breathe. I can't breathe in front of her children. I can't breathe outside her car. I can't breathe because that Mayor Sam Liccardo didn't do anything. That's what we should be focusing about. We shouldn't be really focusing about you trying to get more power and how you're going to do that, right? In a way of a distraction. You should actually be in talks with Chief Garcia. And already those police officers shouldn't be even put on hold or leave. They should be fired, because the moment that any of the citizens do something like that, we're in jail and we're being prosecuted, right? But that's only happens to people of color, not anybody else. So we should be talking about that, and we should stop with this syringe of you trying to get more power. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vasquez.
Hi, yeah, this is Omar Vasquez. And I really wanted to say that moving the mayor election and lining them up to the presidential election is really a really good chance to improve democracy, to have more people participating in our elections, especially minorities, that they don't usually vote when there is a mayor election, but because when few people participate in elections, then our democracy is failing. When more people participate in our elections, then we have a stronger democracy because more people feel represented. Unfortunately, this proposal comes con una trampa. It comes with a backdoor deal, with a secret room deal. It comes with something that was not discussed with the city council. They actually fired the city council member, the minority ones, the ones that we're talking about way before you guys approve a law on equality bill, trying to give voice to the Latinos and minority people. And what you did the next week is you just cut their voices, oppress them. So that's why I feel with this measure, it was supposed to be a really good one policy proposed by former Vice Mayor Magdalena Carrasco, and boom, it is ruined. Now I'm here talking against it. So I'm opposed, and I hope you guys remove it from the ballot. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. I'll return to council now. Thank you to the members of the committee who came to speak. Councilmember Carrasco.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank all the speakers for coming out on this special council session, especially this early in the morning. It's always great to hear their opinion and to get them engaged. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we're here after having had the last marathon on the last day of council session, is because some of us really felt that that this initiative really lacked resident and our citizens' input as we're looking to see how we're going to continue to govern the city of San Jose. But I want to thank my colleagues as well for some very thoughtful memos that have been put through. I want to thank staff for the presentation and for a lot of work that you've been doing over the summer. I don't think that we've had much of a rest over this July month, so I appreciate the work that you've been doing. And I want to thank our city employees and of course our leadership in the city for also working very hard to really educate a lot of our community members on the implications of this initiative. For those of those who believed in the benefits of it, and those also who understood or who believed in the or saw the pitfalls of it, let's just say. Wherever you fell in the spectrum, I'm really grateful for all of the work and all of the hours that were put into it. I know, it's not a secret. I've been very public as to how I have felt about it, and my commitment in terms of if this continues to move forward. But I also want to thank you, Mayor, for a thoughtful memo that you dropped yesterday, and really for reconsidering your position, at least for now. Maybe not so much in terms of your thinking regarding the governance of our city, but maybe in terms of the process and how we attain additional input from residents and how we get greater research, best practices, whatever it is that the commission might be considering and how they gather more information. So I'm glad that we're here at this point. It's taken us a little bit longer and it's been an interesting ride, let's just say, for my entire family as well. So we've had some interesting conversations around the table. A 14-year-old shouldn't know this much, but it has been an eye opener. And I think that we need to go into this eyes wide open as we look at the different items that we'll be voting on today. For one, I want to say that I want to preface it by saying that the reason why I've been digging my heels, making my arguments, appealing to individuals, speaking with different organizations, and being so public about this is because I believe in good government and transparency. And so when I co-authored the memo on fair elections almost 2 years ago and went before the Rules Committee, you had the forethought and the decision making to send my memo to the San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, which was the right thing to do. I may not have agreed with it at that time because I was trying to really understand what the process was, but it was the right thing to do before it came to the full council, which is where we debated it. And unfortunately, it lost 6-5. So as you can imagine, considering such a dramatic change in the way that we govern the city, why it wouldn't have gone through the same process, why it would not have been moved to the same board of campaign and political practices seemed to have been a step that was skipped. And I'm glad that now we are stepping back, pulling back, and now slowing things down if indeed this passes today. And I hope that my colleagues will reconsider their vote and actually do that today. But in that same light, I want to add that there is also the idea of the contribution finance reform, which is an interesting item to me because I think everybody would agree that we want to make sure that those who are elected to office and those who make decisions do so with integrity and with a moral compass. And so we never want our elected officials to have in their DNA any slight semblance of corruption, or that they seem to have been bought off by a developer or anybody else. And that, of course, we always have the impression that money talks, and that, and we've seen the most corrupt practices take place when money is on the table. We get that. And so I understand the premise, and I understand the spirit in which contribution financing comes to the table. I want to say the following, though. What we have on the table now opens the doors for an infinite amount of fundraising to take place for independent expenditures. And we know this because those of us who have been already in campaigns have seen it. This doesn't impact IEs or independent expenditures. Those who have access to wealthy networks, which by the way, I don't know really any Eastsiders who are interested in running for office, whether it's for assembly, state, council, school boards. We don't have access. I don't come from a wealthy family. I come from a family who worked in the Del Monte canneries, who were Teamsters all their lives, who, I went on the picket lines with them to just earn a couple of extra pennies on the dollar so that we could have a better living. But my mother didn't make over $9 an hour before she died. And so we're blue collar workers who don't have a wealthy network. But I'll tell you that if I cross over 101, I can give you right off the top of my head an immediate list of individuals who could run like that for any office that they want, and who could fund their races based on one fundraiser because of the wealthy networks that they have, and who could immediately garner the support through independent expenditures. And I know that based on, and I'm sure that the lawyers who sit on this council would appreciate the Supreme Court case on what is it, the Citizens United versus Federal Elections Commission 558 US 310 from 2010 case. It was a landmark decision of the Supreme Court of the United States concerning campaign finance. The court held that the free speech clause of the First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting independent expenditures for political communications by corporations, including nonprofit corporations, labor unions, and other associations. So whereas my hands are now tied from getting contributions that I control for my campaign so that I can represent the east side of San Jose, so that Maya Esparza can represent the east side of San Jose, so that someone like Sylvia Arenas, who, by the way, there has never been another Latina that represented Evergreen and who had the kind of interest in the flatlands of Evergreen, who don't consider themselves, by the way, part of Evergreen. They consider themselves part of Overfelt and Meadow Fair and Welch Park, who finally have someone who really is concerned about the gang activity and childcare and the educational gap, and not just the hills of Evergreen, although she represents that very well, but someone who doesn't have also a wealthy network that we could finally run. But now our hands are going to be tied. So I get the spirit of finance reform, and I know that it pulls very well, and that this was probably the sugar, or as Sylvia Arenas said, the zucchini that was hidden in the spaghetti, or I don't know what she hid it in, but that was needed to get that bitter pill to get swallowed. But it ties my hands to get elected for other things unless I can find a wealthy godfather to fund an IE so that I can go ahead and run for something else. And so unlike, some of you all or other people west of 101, it makes it very difficult for other East Siders to do so. So I'm just letting you know that, again, poor people, people of color, people who are not connected, people who are not connected to wealthy Bellarmine legacy families get screwed. So I'm going to leave that there. And I guess maybe we'll go ahead and send it off to the board or a commission to review that and see what they think about that. Because I didn't know that we had a broken system, although I know that, again, it pulls very well. But so I'm not going to say much other than I hope that as we continue on this process, that we will get significant and important feedback from the commission that's being established, the task force that's being established. I have a couple of issues with, Vice Mayor Jones, thank you so much for your memo. I really appreciate you going into that kind of detail in terms of the kind of composition and the establishment of the task force. I do have an issue when one office has more appointments on the commission versus the rest of the offices, because then I think that skews the power of one office versus the other. Because again, what we're talking about here is equity. What we've been arguing about is equity. What we've been concerned about is how we govern our offices and how we make sure that we have representation throughout the city in every aspect, whether it's the planning commission, whether it is there at the dais, and now making such an important decision as to whether or not we even go to the ballot with expanded powers, because we may not even go, and I just want to be able to also preface that, we may not even go to the ballot with any options. The task force may decide this isn't the choice for the city of San Jose. And I hope that that's also one of the options, that they come back and go, you know, this based on research and based on best practices, you know, this is what we have found. And so that will be up to us. And finally, what I want to say is, you know, we all have expiration dates. These seats don't belong to us. They're borrowed. The good voters in our districts have been kind enough to have faith in us for a very limited amount of time. And our job is to represent them to the best of our abilities. My North Star are always my children, and I have to be able to come home and be able to look at them in the face and be able to know that I've done the best to my abilities, and sleep with a clean conscience. And I know that all of you do the same, but I say that because I need to be able to leave something that belongs to the city of San Jose, not to Magdalena Carrasco. So this is why it was imperative for me to make sure that individuals understood what this deal meant. It was a deal that I had not been a part of. It was a deal that that the primary unions of the city of San Jose had not been a part of, and employees were going to be impacted very, very directly. And of course, I get it. Individuals fall on both sides of this argument, but pulling back, slowing it down, and allowing individuals to understand the pros and the cons, I think, is essential in making the right decisions and allowing the voters to finally understand the arguments of the initiative. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to move the mayor's memo. I'm not completely comfortable with the language, Mayor, because it does lay a foundation, and Sylvia Arenas's memo alludes to that. I'm going to move the motion, the memo, so that we can move forward with some conversation and dialogue. But I'm moving the mayor's memo along with Vice Mayor Chappie Jones' memo as well, and Councilmember Arenas's number 1, number 3, and number 4, as well as Councilmember Esparza's and my memos number 2 and number 3. That's my motion.
Okay,
Second.
Second? Yeah, the second, Councilmember Esparza, just to confirm. Councilmember Kraska, you moved your and Councilmember Esparza's memos, items 2 and 3, Councilmember Rance's memo, items 1, 3, and 4, and all of the memos, all the recommendations from Vice Mayor Jones and my memos. Is that right?
Correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Rance.
Thank you. I wasn't sure I was going to be next, so it's a bit of a surprise. I want to thank all of the residents who've called in early this morning at 9 o'clock. I know that sometimes our days have been blending in, our work days and our family lives, because some of us work at home, are not distinguishable anymore. And so getting up this early in the morning for some is difficult. And so I'm glad that you heeded to the call and you've made your voices heard. And I think it was very apparent from the last meeting and between the last meeting and today, we've heard very clearly and very loudly that our residents want to participate. And, you know, they've written letters, they've made these calls this morning, they made calls last month. And I'm really proud of our San Jose residents for wanting to participate and to be this civically involved. As you can see that this pandemic has created a lot of changes within our lives, from working at home to also having a civil unrest, because there's a lot of inequities that this pandemic has sharply raised, and that's due to some of the systemic racial inequities that are part of our city government, that are part of a lot of other organizations, and that need to have some changes. And so when you heard today people call in and talk about either their opposition or their support for any one of our memos, you also heard them talk about some of the reforms for our police department. And I don't want to ignore that, because there really is two pandemics that are happening right now. One that is with COVID-19, and the other one really is with our systemic racism. And I think it's part of our job to answer that and to acknowledge that and to make sure that we let our residents know that there's a path forward, that their voices are being heard, and that there's a path forward for them to participate in. And that piece of it, in terms of having our residents so involved, to me is I think this is once in a lifetime type of experience, where we're going to see our residents really shape the future of San Jose in a way that no developer can shape our city, no matter what kind of building they bring into the city of San Jose. The way that our San Jose residents are rising and organizing and voicing their concerns and being part of the solution, to me, is so gratifying, as well as I think it creates really a change for our residents to participate and to shape and shift what our city government is going to look like. And for me, that's the most important thing, because it's part of system improvements. And part of me, well, I never intended to be a politician. For sure, when I was going through my master's, I really fell in love with policy, and I thought about how our families, I had been working with families all my life and in my professional career, and one family at a time. And that just doesn't seem to be enough anymore, because we need to change the rules for our families. We need to change the rules for our communities. And this is the time. I never thought that I was going to live through my service here as a council member with the real opportunity to have these kinds of system improvements, where we're going to change the rules for generations to come. Because as you can see, what is rendered now, what we see now, is an accumulation of lack of system improvements for many generations, or inadvertent rules, inadvertent kind of changes or systemic structural racism that has been created because of past policies. And some of them have been very specific, like redlining, and those types of policies haven't really changed in our communities. We love to live with one another when we look and talk like one another, but it's like, I think our council member Carrasco has said it before. Did we all Latinos decided to move to the east side for one particular reason? Was it because of the great food that's out there? No, it's because it was redlining, and it was because we could only purchase properties in certain parts of San Jose. And so we ended up all living together, which is a wonderful thing. But at the same time, it's really time to change. And some of those policies are catching up to us. And our residents are telling us, hey, we recognize that there's some systemic and structural racism integrated into our bureaucracies, and that we need to change. And so for me, this is an opportunity for us to do better by our residents, an opportunity to also hear from our residents, because that's really, I think this is really where change happens, is when there's students out in the streets, and we've seen it over time and through some of the wars, certainly through the 70s, which I was just a baby. I did not live, I did not protest or anything in the streets during that time, but I know that created a lot of changes for us, an opportunity for us to stand up against our government and say, no, we didn't want to be part of a war. And it's a lot of the times it's our youth, it's our students that really brave themselves and risk themselves in protest and ask for the most changes that we can provide them with. And so I wanted to acknowledge that in some of the calls that I heard this morning, we're not only just talking about some of what is being discussed today as part of the strong mayor discussion or the campaign reform or changing the mayor's race to a presidential year, but we're also talking about this other pandemic that is systemic racism, and that we have to really rise as elected officials and accept that this is part of the conversation that our residents are telling us that we need to be that we need to participate in, and lead with race, and making sure that we have some equity, definitely equity built into the city of San Jose. And so with that, I wanted to ask for some amendments. But let me just take a step back. I think you all know how I felt about all of these elements in the proposal last month. I'm definitely against giving one office too much power because there isn't checks and balances there. I also asked the question about what is the problem that we're trying to solve for. I always think it's important for us to identify what is the problem that we're trying to solve for. Is there a problem that we're trying to solve for? And so I'm really grateful that Councilmember Carrasco has included a portion of my memo here. And I wanted to ask Councilmember Carrasco, would you be willing to make an amendment? Because I heard from our residents that they wanted to keep, and they didn't say a blue ribbon commission or blue ribbon task force. And so I think every item that we're discussing needs to move to a path forward, and we need to have a process. And so part of our campaign reform that needs to go to the San Jose Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices, and we need to ask them: is there a problem with some of the contributions that we're receiving? And if we limit lobbyists, or if we limit a certain type of contributions, would that also inadvertently create less of opportunities for some of candidates, just like myself, who really didn't have a base, if you will, but a lot of folks who are part of the political system here are willing to give to a candidate like myself to make it possible for me to be able to have a fair campaign, a campaign that is able to win. And so, Councilmember Carrasco, I don't see your face popping up, and so I'm not sure if I should ask you a question just yet. Ahí estás. All right. So I wanted to ask you, is there a particular reason that you left out? Well, what I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of questions I want to ask you. One is there a particular reason why you want the Blue Ribbon Charter, Blue Ribbon Task Force versus our Charter Review Commission? Because I'm thinking, and maybe the lawyers can answer this question for me, I don't know, maybe Mark can answer the question for me, or Ed. If we're looking just at charter changes, do we need a charter review commission? And if we're only taking a look at the form of government and having that body review our current form of government and then consider any other forms of governments to address the issues that plague us now, which I'm not sure which ones those are, but that's for that commission to review and then to decide and consider any form of government. Is there a particular reason why we would use a commission versus a blue ribbon task force?
Councilmember, I believe it's basically just the terminology used. I believe the council could create a body that will do whatever the council wants the body to do with regard to the charter. I think the custom has been to call it a charter commission, but it can be a blue ribbon commission. It could be whatever you call it. So it's basically the terminology is just different, but the scope can be whatever the council wants that body to do.
Got it. So legally, it doesn't have to be a charter review commission, it sounds like.
No, it's just the terminology that I think most jurisdictions use because it's focused on the charter. Blue ribbon commissions are used for a variety of different tasks. So again, it's basically terminology.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm hoping that I could change my, one thing that I heard really loud and clear is that our folks really want to have a broader or greater ability to take a look at the different forms of government and consider those in reviewing our current form of government. So I don't want to limit it, and I realize this is already part of my memo, but I heard in some of the comments that in adopting Vice Mayor Jones' composition and scope of work for the Blue Ribbon Charter Commission, we're also limiting that view to only take a look at, and let me read that out loud so I can share with you. So it says, consideration of provision consistent with mayor council government structure found in other cities in which mayor has executive legislative authority, evaluation of transition of election cycle from odd number, consideration of additional measures. So I want to just revise that to A. I think maybe a review of current mayor council form of government and consider all forms of government to make a decision on how to best improve our current system. So in other words, I just don't want to limit the mayor. I don't want to limit this group to only the mayor council government structure.
Councilmember Arenas, thank you for that input. But if we try to capture your sentiment in 2C of my memo.
Okay, consideration of additional measures and potential charter amendments as needed. That is really open to me, Vice Mayor. That could mean any type of charter amendment and not specific to the form of government that we're held to. So that actually to me is really open. It's vastly open. And what I want to do is it considers additional measures and potential charter amendments as needed. And so it's not really specific to the form of government. It actually just allows that body to consider any potential charter amendments. And I understand that will allow that commission to do that. But But when we say into a consideration of provisions consistent with mayor council government structure found in other cities, in which the mayor has executive authority and the council has legislative authority, it's kind of already predetermined that that's what they're going to evaluate. And so if that's the scope of their work, do they have the authority to expand the scope of their work with 2C?
Yes.
So they could decide that they wanted to take a look at something completely different outside of the council mayor form of government.
That's correct.
And they could take a look at, they could even take a look at IPA charter amendments. They could look at commission charter amendments. They could take a look at almost anything.
Potentially.
Okay, well, that makes me nervous because I thought there would be a specific scope to this and some limitations. Councilmember Carrasco, are you?
One of the things, I guess, where you can define limitations is as long as it improves accountability, representation, and inclusion. So some of the examples that you made could be considered somewhat outside of that parameter. So there are some guardrails. It's just not so prescriptive that they don't have the ability to look at other charter changes.
Got it. Councilmember Carrasco, are you?
So if I may, it sounds like what you're saying is that 2A is prescribing an analysis of strong mayor, which is what you're hoping is not the case, and you want to make sure that that 2A is not a prescription of strong mayor, but rather an analysis of the different types of governing structures without pre-guiding, presupposing, or establishing a foundation for a strong mayorship.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Carrasco, did you have a question or?
I believe that's what Councilmember Arenas is trying to get at. So it's not so much opening it up to a million other opportunities, but rather not prescribing the direction of strong mayor, but rather looking at the different governing structures.
Yes, that is correct. And strong mayor council would be part of their focus, but other forms of government would also be part of their focus as well.
Okay, so, and that's not included in your A. So do you want to make that amendment, Councilmember Arenas, for 2A?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Carrasco. That's exactly what I was asking for.
If you phrase that for 2A, I'll consider the amendment.
Okay, so if it's consideration of provisions, maybe it's review of current council member governments. So maybe it's consideration of current mayor council form of government in the city of San Jose, along with a broader scope of other forms of government that could benefit the city of San Jose.
Point of clarification here. I'm sorry, while I'm listening here, Councilmember Arenas, Councilmember Carrasco included her and Esparza's memo, which asks for a much more general research and solicit input from the community for strong mayor and other potential charter reforms. to update and improve our governance structure. So doesn't that encompass kind of what you're asking for?
And, I'm sorry, Councilmember Davis, what memo is that on?
That's Councilmember Carrasco's and Esparza's memo, item number 2, which was included in the motion. So I'm just, to avoid the necessity of an amendment, I'm just asking if that is included in, you know, if that encompasses the scope of what you're talking about. It seems true to me.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilmember Davis. I think what I'll do is I'll make a substitute motion to move my memo and include those items, Councilmember Carrasco, that you have from your memo. Which items were those?
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
I'll second.
Could you repeat the motion, the substitute motion, please?
Sure. So the substitute motion is to move my memo 1 through 5 and include the mayor's, well, in my memo, it already includes the mayor's 1A, B, and C. And it includes Councilmember Carrasco and Esparza's memo to align the mayoral election with presidential and expand the diversity of voices heard at the ballot box. So that's number 3. And we can also include item number 2 on there. So it's all
I'm
of
sorry, number 2 of what?
your memo, Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you.
So that was already said. You're including 2 and 3 from the memo from Councilmember Esparza and Carrasco, plus all of your memo. Is that right?
Right. The only item that wasn't on my memo was item 2, but item 3 was already on there. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a point of clarification on number 2 of the Arenas memo. Do we need to decide that today? Right, so that's not an either or, so we need more clarification on that item in the memo.
It is an either or. It's either a 2-year or a 6-year.
So the motion would not have one or the other, I guess is what I'm asking for clarification.
We can hear from the rest of the council members to see if they prefer a 2-year or a 6-year term, and I'm open to either one.
Okay.
And council member and mayor and council member, we will need to know that so that we could draft the ballot measure. Now, clearly you could still consider that when you do the final adoption on the 4th, but for us, for the purposes of drafting the ordinance that comes out of today's discussion, it would be good to know the direction. However, as I said, you could also change it on August 4th.
I'm sorry, point of clarification again on the motion, because I'm writing this down. Does this include, so this includes Vice Mayor Jones's memo, but it encompasses his entire memo, is that correct?
It encompasses his entire memo, and with the slight change on 2A, and instead of having 2A, I'll take your number 2 on your memo.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's been another modification, so I want to be clear. In addition to what you said about incorporating your memorandum, Councilmember Arenas, and items 2 and 3 from the Councilmembers Esparza and Carrasco memo, incorporating all of Vice Mayor Jones' memo except for 2A. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Anything further, Councilmember Arenas?
No, and thank you, Councilmember Davis. I think that was a really great suggestion. That language already exists on Councilmember Esparza and Carrasco's memo, and so I think it's a great substitute. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice
Okay.
Mayor?
Actually, Mayor, just one last item. I know that we have been very much focused on the strong mayor and the campaign reform. And I'd also like to hear from my council colleagues in terms of the mayor's race, changing that into a presidential year. And I just want to let our residents know that that's absolutely of the utmost importance to us, and that has been vetted, and residents have been brought into that process for about a year now, or maybe even over a year. And so there has been process behind that proposal. I know that there are some comments that were made during public comment saying that that should also have its own process. Although that has been very grassroots and community driven, and has had a process, like I said, I think over a year, that culminated into having this measure possibly placed on the ballot for this year. And so I feel very confident in moving that forward, as there was a process that existed for it. The other items on our memo, which was changing the form of current government, the council mayor government, and the campaign reform, didn't identify an issue, yet we had a solution for it. And so that's the reason I wanted to find a path forward for those. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Actually, Mayor, in an effort not to get in trouble, I think Councilmember Esparza was before me.
She
No,
was,
no.
and for some reason the
Okay.
hands realigned themselves.
Okay. just double checking.
All right.
Thank you, though.
All right. First of all, I want to thank the city employees and city unions who I've had numerous conversations with over the last couple of weeks. And if anybody wanted to get a lesson in terms of how to lobby, how to articulate their positions, check in with those folks, because we had, again, several conversations, and in the course of those conversations, even when they felt that I wasn't moving towards their position, those conversations were always respectful, always civil, always professional. And I just wanted to give our city employees and city unions a shout out in terms of how they conducted themselves and how they were effective in terms of providing me with new insight in terms of their perspective and how they viewed this particular effort. I was really excited, Magdalena, when you made your motion. You captured everything I wanted to accomplish. And then with the friendly amendment, it does change some of the direction. And part of that direction that's changing is I do want to see a focus on a robust evaluation of a strong mayor form of government, or a mayor council form of government. And that's captured in the mayor's in memo, which I don't think is prescriptive. And I don't think my memo is prescriptive. I think it's descriptive. It's aspirational. It's what we want to see, but there's no guarantee what the recommendation is going to be coming out of the commission. So I cannot support the friendly amendment weakening at least the effort to have robust analysis and discussion on a strong mayor form of government. Also wanted to talk about the options in terms of a 2-year term, extending the mayor's term, or having a 6-year term. All three options have their pros and cons. And I really struggled with trying to land on what the right option is. If we go with the 2-year term, effectively what we're having is someone that runs for mayor and then is going to have to turn around and start running for mayor again, similar to what happens in Congress. If we go with a 6-year term, the downside to that is that you wouldn't have a presidential election to choose someone until 2028. And my understanding, based on all the input that I've received and all the feedback I've received and all the thoughts and emails is that there's a sense of urgency to see that something happens in 2024. So by having a 6-year term, that would defeat the purpose. That caused me to land on extending Sam's term for 2 years. I think it would be a more seamless transition. I think it would be a more a transition that would accommodate the needs and desires of a lot of the stakeholders in terms of what they want to see and what they want to happen. One of the downsides of this, and one of the things I struggled with, was the impact this would have on my colleague, Councilmember Perales. I know that he wants to run for office in 2022, and I support his effort. And if he can help me get in shape, I'll actually get out there and knock on some doors for him. But I do not believe that by extending Sam's term by 2 years is going to adversely impact Raul's ability to run for mayor in 2024. So taking all of those things into consideration, I've landed on extending Sam's term for 2 years. So I would not be able to support the motion on the floor with the friendly amendments. So I will be voting against it, but I will, if the motion fails, I will make another motion to incorporate all of the elements in Magdalena's motion with the addition of giving Sam a 2-year extension.
Okay, Councilmember Esparza?
Thank you. So I have some comments, but before we get to that, just because Vice Mayor Jones just spoke, I'm not clear on what friendly amendments he doesn't support. So if, Vice Mayor, if you could explain that a little bit more, I'd appreciate it. So which specifically amendments do you not support, just so I can understand?
Actually, Vice Mayor, I think you were referring to amendments. There's actually a substitute motion from Council.
Yeah, substitute motion. Thank you.
I don't think there was any friendly amendment accepted yet.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, substitute motion.
Okay.
But to be specific, Councilmember Esparza, in the mayor's memo 2A, the substitute motion would negate the mayor's 2A in terms of align mayoral executive authority, residents, and local businesses, reasonable expectations for responsive and accountable democratic governance in a major U.S. city. And it would also eliminate my 2A as well, in addition to the extending the mayor's term. I wanted to have that clarified.
So you're saying that what's on the floor conflicts with aligning mayoral executive authority. Well, that's strong mayor, right? The purpose of this Blue Ribbon Task Force would be to study the governance forms, including the strong mayor form of governance.
Right.
So
yeah.
how does that negate 2A?
Well, it negates 2A because it eliminates that statement of at least having as part of the objective to align the mayor's executive abilities, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to have that specifically stated in whatever motion passes.
So let me just, so that I understand what's happening.
Yeah.
The motion and then the one substitute motion, the discussion that was had was to avoid a prescriptive nature to say, we expect this commission to come out with a strong mayor form of government. And you're saying, just to make sure I capture this right, that you want to say, we align mayoral authority. That's a kind of a vague statement. I mean, in terms of, it's a fine statement, but I'm just saying in terms of asking people to study something, it's not terribly specific. So I'm unclear as to how 2A is negated when we're including the strong mayor form of government in the scope of work. Maybe I'm slow, but I'm just not getting it.
No, good question. So it really is the prism that they're looking, the lens and prism that they're looking at this. So they're going to be looking at other forms of government and other potential charter changes. But I want to have in writing at least some language in terms of a prism that they're going to look through in terms of their evaluation and judgment. And having, looking through that prism of having an alignment between the expectations, and we've had numerous conversations on, at least some of us feel that there's a disconnect between expectations and actual authority. So going into this process, I want part of their overriding principles to be looking through that prism of how we can align residents' expectations with the mayor's actual authority.
And see, I thought we just did that.
So my ask is to have that language that's in the mayor's memo included in whatever motion that passes.
So again, just to be clear, so you want what passes today to include the language that a ballot measure will come to us in spring of 2022 that will align executive authority. Again, that's the kind of vague language that will align executive authority. I mean, what we're saying though is what the motion is to study that and come up with recommendations, because I think what all these discussions have been about have been to incorporate study and community input. And so are you saying that the make or break for you is that we must have a ballot measure to have strong mayor in 2022? Is that?
I don't have that perception of that statement. The Charter Commission can come back and say, based on all the research that we've done, based on that lens that you provide us, that we feel there already is a correlation or a relationship between residents' expectations and their authority.
Or they could come back and say, hey, we actually like this other menu better of
Yes.
these other options that nobody here has considered today, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And they come back, using my analogy, if they come back and say, we think it's already aligned, then it wouldn't make sense for the council to put it on the ballot because you're not making any changes. But I want, again, to have the process go through that lens of the alignment, expectations and authority.
So in the create a blue ribbon, so just to recap, item number 2 from my memo with Councilmember Carrasco says create a blue ribbon task force to research and solicit community input on strong mayor and other potential charter reforms to improve and update our governance structure.
Right.
If the language said including aligning mayoral executive authority with residents and local businesses, reasonable expectations for responsible and accountable democratic governance in a major US city, would that satisfy your concern?
So restate,
right?
Yeah, no.
So it's taking item number 2 on the memo for myself and Councilmember Carrasco, which reads, create a blue ribbon task force to research and solicit community input on strong mayor and other potential charter reforms to improve and update our governance structure. And then what I did was I just said including, and I tacked on the literal language from the mayor's 2A, which so it would be including align mayoral executive authority with residents and local businesses, reasonable expectations for responsive and accountable democratic governance in a major US city. So we would tack on 2A to that item. Would that satisfy your
so-
concerns to
So
address those?
So effectively, you're saying that you're adopting the mayor's memo.
Well, the mayor's memo, I mean, we actually came out with our memos first, and the mayor had that item on align mayoral exec. I mean, I'm just saying in terms of what the motion is right now, right? To address your concern, if there's a way to include that language from 2A to the existing motion, or actually it's the substitute motion, right? Because there's an underlying motion. So doesn't that address the concern?
Yes, but I just want to just clarify. So if we adopt that, we're in effect adopting all the elements in the mayor's memo.
No. Well, I mean, what we're saying is
there's a lot of overlap.
I mean, I think, you know, again, if we're going to address semantics, I'm just saying if that item is if you need that exact language, align mayoral executive authority, we can do that right now, right? There's nothing preventing us from doing that right now.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I just want to, again, have clarity, looking at the items that that you have in your memo and how they correspond to the mayor's memo. I'm trying to identify, besides that one change that we just discussed, if there are any other differences, and if not, then effectively what we're saying is.
Well, okay, so I think in terms of what the motion on the floor is, that we follow the practice that was set that Councilmember Carrasco referenced earlier in her remarks by referring some items to the our own board of fair campaign and political practices so that they can study the campaign finance reforms.
And I support that piece of it as well. So
yeah, and so that's in the motion right now, or in the substitute motion. Sorry, that's in the substitute motion right now.
Right.
And so,
I'm sorry.
And so then there was just the clarification of the scope of work, which you already, you know, clarified. So that's already been clarified. So I'm just kind of wondering if we can address this concern right now. There's no need to move forward because we can just take care of it, address your concern, and keep going.
Okay, so it sounds like we're close. Just want to clarify. So in the mayor's
Well, I
memo,
guess I'm trying to figure out where we're apart, I guess is what I'm trying to figure out.
well, we might not be. I want to get clarification. So in the mayor's memo, we talked about 2A, and you addressed that. BCD has been addressed in terms of moving it to the Board of Fair Campaign and Political Practices. 2E is really the catch-all. And then 3 is moving it to move forward to November 2020. So did I?
Well, I think what we're missing is making sure, yeah, in the motion that's on the floor in Councilmember Arenas's item in number 4, again, referring those to the San Jose Board of Campaign and Political Practices. And then number 5, I believe that staff said that they needed some direction from us on number 5 today. So we have to have that discussion.
Yeah, so I'm just going to listen to this as in the background as we're talking. So please have a seat.
That's good. Yep, I believe you're on. You're muted. No, okay.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Sprouse. Did you guys? Were you able to finish your thought?
Yeah. That was my thought. I thought Lon was Mark Vanity for a second there.
I did too.
Like, why was
I thought he was jumping in.
Yeah, so that's the thought, is that number 5 in Councilmember Arenas's motion, substitute motion, that's, according to staff, what they had asked us to do is discuss options for redistricting timelines. And that item requires some discussion, so we need to discuss that anyway. So I'm trying to figure out, like, why could I'm trying to figure out how we can address your concerns right now in the moment and keep this moving.
Right, well, you addressed part of my concerns by including that language from the mayor's memo, bringing back 2A in my memo would address my concerns. And then I guess
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? 2A on the mayor's memo, adding that language, and then you mentioned your memo.
Yes.
Just now, I didn't catch that. What did?
So 2A in my memo was in the substitute motion was taken out, and I wanted to have that put back.
Okay, so then, because Councilmember Davis suggested that just since what's included in the motion is, if I capture this correctly, Councilmember Davis, since what's already included in the motion is item number 2 from Councilmember Carrasco's and my memo, that we didn't need to redraft or reword item number 2A of your memo in order to address the concerns about sort of being prescriptive on this item. Because you mentioned yourself that you didn't want it to be prescriptive. You wanted the governance structure to be studied. And so I'm assuming that in trying to avoid us making some sausage, Councilmember Davis provided a clear kind of way of addressing that concern that includes it. And so what I'm just proposing right now, in order to address your concern, is to have item number 2A on the mayor's memo, adding that language to item number 2 of Councilmember Carrasco's and my memo, so that that language is specifically included into that in order to address your concern. Does that work?
That part works, and maybe I missed part of the substitute motion, but my understanding was Councilmember Arenas eliminated my 2A, not modified it, or.
I'll leave it to Councilmember Arenas, but I thought it was in acknowledgement of Councilmember Davis's pretty smart, kind of clear suggestion of addressing everybody's concerns in existing language instead of rewording item 2A. Is that correct? I just want to make sure.
Can I, Mayor, can I ask if this is an amendment? Because currently I know that I took on Councilmember Davis's amendment to include number 2 on Councilmember Esparza and Carrasco's memo. But what I'm hearing is that in order to address Vice Mayor's concerns, that we also add 2A from the mayor's memo. Is that correct?
For me, both 2A, the mayor's 2A and my 2A.
So then we're back to rewording 2A instead, right?
Just one moment, Councilmember Esparza. Councilmember Arenas jumped in. I know admittedly out of order, but she is the maker of the motion, so I just want to understand.
Yeah.
Councilmember Arenas, did you get your question answered?
Well, I guess I don't understand why, if the reason that I eliminated 2A Vice Mayor was because I thought it was too prescriptive, and I thought that's where Councilmember Esparza was going in terms of trying to listen to some of your concerns and adopt some language to address that. And I thought in picking up the mayor's 2A along with her number 2, that it would suffice because I continue to believe that the 2A on your memo, Vice Mayor, is very prescriptive because it only looks at the mayor council and that is asking for that particular, for the executive authority and council, in which the mayor has executive authority and council has legislative authority. So it's already prescribing what we're trying to avoid.
Councilmember Rance, just to be clear, you're not accepting a friendly amendment, is that right?
Well, I didn't hear a friendly amendment. That's what I'm trying to ask.
So,
was that a friendly amendment?
I was gonna make a friendly amendment because I had the floor. So I was asking Vice Mayor Jones questions so that I can make a friendly amendment in order to satisfy his concerns. That's where I was coming from.
Okay.
Do you want to offer that friendly amendment now, Councilmember?
So that's why I'm asking Vice Mayor Jones, so you want to include your item 2A now, right? Because we had a discussion, you said you did not. So
Yes.
if we looked at 2A, so if you have your 2A in front of you right now, and we said, because you mentioned you wanted it to be open, because frankly, I think this commission could meet and come up with some really good ideas beyond what we're all thinking of, and I think we're all kind of looking for that. So if 2A were to read, consideration of governance structures, governance structure provisions, including those consistent with the mayor council government structure found in other cities in the United States in which the mayor has executive authority and the council has legislative authority. Would that language address your concerns, Vice Mayor?
Repeat that, give that to me again.
Sure. So so item 2A, so if we added 4 words, if it read consideration of governance structure provisions, including those consistent with the mayor council government structure found in other cities in the United States in which the mayor has executive authority and the council has legislative authority. Would that address your concerns?
I can live with that.
Okay, so I would like to make a friendly amendment to Councilmember Arenas if we could change, if we could keep 2A of the Vice Mayor's memo and add those 4 words so that the sentence would read, and I'll read it again for staff, consideration of governance structure provisions, including those consistent with the mayor council government structure found in other cities in the United States in which the mayor has executive authority and the council has legislative authority. Would you accept that friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay.
I'm glad we worked that out.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate your, your ability to work through issues as always. Thank you for that. So I actually.
The seconder accepts it as well.
Oh, that's right.
Just
We
to
need
be
a
clear.
seconder.
Yeah, and Councilmember Prost does accept the amendment.
Okay. So I wanted to thank the community speaking out. The community has been very outspoken, obviously on the 30th and the 1st, but I don't think that anything about this July is normal. We're in a global pandemic, we're in a recession, we have the most civil unrest than we've had since the 60s. And so this has not been a normal time. And so I think it's right that here we are in not having a recess and that we have had this special meeting today, and that the community has also spent their July continuing to speak out, and that in these in the protests that we have had, in the physical protests as well as the protests on social media, that people have been demanding to be heard in our form of government, in all of our decision making. They don't just want to be heard, they want to be part of that process. And so I'd like to thank the hundreds of people that have, if not more, that have been speaking out all month on this. I'd like to thank my colleagues for listening as well to the community. I'd like to thank the mayor for listening to folks and addressing concerns that have been raised about process and about unity. And I'd also like to thank the organizations that have been speaking out this July about having the need to have a thoughtful and inclusive process, including the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, La Raza Roundtable, Citizens for Fiscal Responsibility, the South Bay Labor Council, former county supervisor and vice mayor Blanca Alvarado, the first Latina to ever represent us on the city council, and Chuck Davidson, who served on the original 1965 commission. And so, you know, all of them, along with so many others, have been speaking up, demanding to be heard, but also demanding to be a part of change, demanding to have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, including on the governance structure of our city. So I really just wanted to thank folks who have stepped up. And the need to have a thoughtful, inclusive process. This is not a normal time. We are in a pandemic. People, it's an incredible time of upheaval. And so now is not the time to rush through anything. You know, there's a tremendous amount of equity that needs to be included in this process. Again, we are in a pandemic. We're relying on Zoom. This is the first council meeting in which we have had translators. Actually, I had a community meeting earlier this month, and when we were kind of getting into it, we discovered and were able to share with the city clerk and others that there is no Vietnamese option in Zoom. Zoom, it doesn't exist. So whenever you do a Zoom meeting and you need to have Vietnamese translations, which is pretty important for a city like ours, you have to pick another language, right? Today it's German, tomorrow it could be something else. In addition to that, we have a huge digital divide that this council has voted to address. And Zoom, you know, we're working to address that digital divide, but Zoom is divisive if we're not going to have an equal opportunity for our community and parts of our city to participate in meetings. And so I think that's really a huge component, and I don't want to overlook it. And I think that's something that the Blue Ribbon Commission needs to address, and it's something that we need to look at in terms of timing. I don't think anybody's going to try and predict when we will go back to quote unquote normal times. I know a lot of folks are predicting summer 2021. I hope it's sooner, but it could be later. And so that at some point through the work of this Blue Ribbon Commission that we actually find a way, especially obviously towards the end of this commission's work, but really throughout, that we find ways to incorporate in-person outreach. The measure J from 1986, they evaluated testimony from city officials, including the city manager, city auditor, other members of the council, former city officials. They sought the expertise of municipal consultants, academics. They had public hearings and tapped the libraries of national organizations dedicated to city governments. That's a pretty extensive body of work that took place in public. And so again, I just ask that as the work of this Blue Ribbon Commission, that we recognize that we're in a pandemic, that we do the work of the public in public as much as possible, and that we make an effort to include folks who are excluded by a process that relies on the internet. I also wanted to really, you know, we've talked a lot about process, but we haven't really looked at the measure itself. And so I will leave that to the future. But I do want to say that it's important that as we look at the governance structure of our city, that it address checks and balances. I'm a product. I'm not ashamed to say it at all. I'm a product of district elections, right? District elections changed the landscape of our city. It changed it politically, but it changed it physically. I used to serve a million years ago when we had one on the, we had a CDBG commission in the 90s. And what we did with CDBG funds was we put in sidewalks and streetlights and roads in East Side and Alviso in the 90s. And that was because we had people on the city council that insisted that we use CDBG funds to bring some equity and having roads. I think Dave Sykes famously worked on the last dirt road in San Jose when you were in Public Works, Dave, and that was in District 7, right? And so we ensure that there is one, checks and balances in a future governance structure for our city, and that we really look at having voices for our neighborhoods. The mayor's office is rightly focused on really big, important things for our city. You know, we've talked a lot about BART, and while we are all involved in that, frankly, the mayor leads it for our city, and I think that's appropriate. And so I want a mayor that is going to focus on a lot of these big deals and issues for our city, but we cannot lose the voices and the accountability to our neighborhoods. And our neighborhoods elect us to represent them. And yeah, I'm focused on quality of life in my district. I don't apologize for that ever, because I'm closest to my neighborhoods. So I'm focused on other things that, you know, I know the mayor has partnered on some things that are quality of life, but the mayor should be focused on larger things. And lastly, as we talk about a governance structure for our city, that we must ensure that there is some equity embedded in that governance structure. And so I know, again, we're gonna have this great commission do the work, but I don't want that to get lost, that we have some serious issues. And I am very hopeful of the work of this commission to do the work, bless you, to do the work that Measure J and other previous commissions. In 1978, Blanca Alvarado and Zoe Lofgren worked on the commission. I want to hear ideas that they are going to research and bring to us that will bring equity, that will rise up the voices of our neighborhoods and ensure accountability to our neighborhoods, and that it's thoughtful for our whole city. So with that, oh, and I also wanted to have, I wanted to address a couple of items that we need to review. One is the 2-year versus the 6-year. I think that's still kind of hanging out there. I think that it's pretty clear that people want democracy, especially right now, and there needs to be an election in 2022. I would prefer a 2-year term. If Sam or Raul or anybody else, I mean, frankly, this isn't about Sam or Raul, this is about democracy. And if Sam or Raul want to run for that office, if we want to look at what that election is going to be like, do we want it, you know, that's fine, but we want democracy. I believe in elections. I think the voters in San Jose want elections, and they want a say in how our city is run. I had some questions on Councilmember Arenas's memo on item 5. So Councilmember Arenas, if you could talk about number 5, there wasn't, I don't have a lot of clarity in terms of, are you looking at 2 charter amendments? I'm not sure what that means. So if you could help me understand, that would be great.
Yeah, I know how controversial this piece is, and I was nervous about having the redistricting and the commission item connected to this particular charter amendment. I know there's on August 4th, we're going to be talking also about the IPA charter amendment, all of the charter changes that we'll be having and that we will move to the ballot in November will be discussed on August 4th. And so my idea was to not have those items connected to this particular charter change because the opposition is going to be great. In case this, I don't know how, I don't know if my motion will move forward. I don't know how that will result in, but I don't want the Planning Commission piece to fail in case this doesn't get approved. I don't want the redistricting and that change that we need in case the census is late to also ride on this if there's opposition to this. And so I'd rather have that go toward, rather have those 2 items connected to the IPA and have that combination versus have it on this particular charter change. Is that clear up?
So you're saying you want to have two charter amendments on the ballot? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Mark, I believe we already have another charter change, which is the IPA role update. Correct,
Yeah,
Mark?
that's correct. That's coming forward on August 4th.
Right. So could we easily transfer some of this language once it's decided on the Planning Commission and the redistricting charter amendment? Could those 2 get connected to the IPA versus having it connected to this particular item?
Yes, it could.
And can we discuss that on August 4th?
Yes. Well, the thing is, though, as I mentioned earlier, it would be good to get direction so that we can provide you with the ballot measures that you are considering. So we could combine them, as Mark indicated, those 3 items together, the IPA, the Planning Commission, and the redistricting into one ballot measure. If you don't want them combined with this one, we simply would like the direction so that we can bring back what the ballot measure would look like so that you can appropriately consider voting on which ballot measures you want to move forward.
So then, Councilmember Cadenas, you're saying have IPA separately, since we're going to have all these items, and then planning, redistricting, and the mayoral election would be a separate item?
So the IPA, the commission, the Planning Commission, and the redistricting together, written together.
Okay.
And then have these items on the strong mayor, the campaign reform, and changing the mayor's race to presidential year together, because they just make sense together.
Councilmember Arenas, if you could clarify and make sure that I read it correctly, are in your number 4, you're asking that the proposed campaign...
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Yes, Ed, I realized what I just said. Yes, thank you. So yes, I'm redirecting that to go towards that. So it won't go on the charter. If this moves forward, like I said, I don't know where the rest of my colleagues stand with this, if they're supportive of this. I hope they can be. I really appreciate what you just finished saying, Councilmember Esparza, that people really want to have some transparency and they want to have their voices heard. This is what we've been hearing all month. And so I think they want to be able to cast a vote for their next mayor. But we've yet to decide on this. I've yet to hear from the rest of our colleagues. And so I'm really nervous about having the Planning Commission and the redistricting charter amendments that need to happen because in case the census is late, which we expect it to be late, to be connected to this particular item. Because if I understand it correctly, Ed, if if this gets voted down and the voters say no. However, I don't know however this looks like at this point. It looks like the way that we've laid it out with my memo. I don't know if this will survive or not, but if it doesn't, then it's connected with the Planning Commission and the redistricting charter amendments, correct?
Correct. The question will be whatever the question is, including whatever items are in there, and they will simply vote yes or no on the entire measure.
Right.
And so today we can give direction to separate that, and then on August 4th we will get IPA and we can offer further direction at that time. Is that correct?
Correct. We just need direction as to what you think today you would like to see, and then we'll bring back the actual ballot measures. We have 2 of them already on there. For the 4th, we'll bring back this one. If you're asking us to combine 2 of the elements in this one in another one, we will come back with a revised one for the other one. On August 4th, you will then see what you have directed us to do, and at that point, you will approve the final version of the ballot measures that will appear on November of this year.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then on August 4th, we can provide any additional direction, so we don't need to decide everything today. So I wanted to address the other items that staff needed feedback. Again, my preference is a 2-year election. I think the voters want an election. The mayor has previously said this is not about him. And again, I'm not trying to make this about the mayor or Raul. This is about democracy in terms of my opinions on whether it should be a 2-year or 6-year term. So staff also wanted some feedback on whether the contribution limit should apply to all candidates. Again, my feedback would be that if the contribution limit applied to some candidates, it should apply to all candidates. The city manager dismissal subject to council rejection, that could change based on today's motion, correct, Mark or Ed?
Yes, so as we indicated, those questions were asked at the end of the presentation because we were assuming we had to make a decision for the August 4th ballot measure, but if you're referring all this to the Blue Ribbon Commission, then it's not necessary for you to make that decision because you're letting them give you initial comments before you make your decision.
Okay, thank you. And then I also wanted to discuss the redistricting timeline. So this deadline means that the July, let's see. So as I understand it, the redistricting ordinance would have to go into effect before the nomination period begins for the March 2022 election. And that would make it November 15th, 2021. And then the proposed deadline for the ordinance would be as many as 213 days past the July 31st, 2021 deadline for the Census Bureau to report data back. So this deadline means we could miss the deadline to put this into effect for the March 2022 election. And so is there a more practical way for us to move up the redistricting deadline so that our new districts would go into effect when they normally would? So you offered us 2 options, so if you could answer that question before going into the options, that would be great.
Sure, I can handle that question. I think what we had proposed was just the reason we proposed those deadlines was to be consistent with the original deadlines in the event the census is timely. You're correct that if the election is going to be held on March of 2022, then the nomination period begins 113 days before, and the ordinance will need to be in effect before that date in order for the new districts to go into effect for that election. as it stands now, the deadline in the charter of October 31st is just the last day. There's no reason that the advisory commission or the council couldn't adopt an ordinance sooner. However, under state law, the council is required to hold at least 3 public hearings, and the advisory commission under the charter is required to hold at least 3 public hearings as well. So those do need to go into effect, and there needs to be some time to accommodate that. One thing also to be aware of is there is a bill in the state legislature to move the 2022 election to June. That has gone out of committee. It hasn't been made into law yet, but if that were to pass, then the nomination period would change. And off the top of my head, I believe 113 days before the June 2022 election would be sometime in February, I believe Valentine's Day.
Okay. Is Lee on the line? Do we know if what the status of that bill, just out of curiosity? Mayor, have you heard anything about that bill?
No.
No. Okay.
And Councilmember Lee's not on the line, and I have not either, but we'll do some follow-up.
Okay. I think that would be really helpful. And so
A lot of
sorry?
legislation, as you know, is stalled in a big way right now.
Yeah,
as a
for
result
sure.
of COVID. So
For sure. And so what you need to hear from us, Ed and Mark, is whether we would extend the deadline or authorize a change by ordinance if it's late. Is that correct?
Yes, I think what Mark had proposed in his memo was the 2 options. We can either specify specific dates or times within the charter amendment, or we can allow for an outside determination, outside the charter determination. So Mark, can you explain your 2 options?
Sure. The first option would just, again, it would tie the deadlines to the date that the city or the states actually receive the redistricting counts from the states. The second option is, it's possible that in the future, a census could also be late for any number of reasons. But the second option would allow the council, if the census is indeed late in any given year, to by ordinance establish a deadline that would guide both the advisory commission's role as well as the deadlines for the enactment of the redistricting ordinance, which would allow a little bit more flexibility given, in this current climate, a lot of things are changing, and there's a number of different proposals out there for what to do with it. And so that second option would allow a little bit more flexibility for the council to decide what to do in that moment.
Okay. And then it also sounds like that flexibility would then address item number 5. It's one of the things mentioned in item number 5 in Councilmember Arenas' memo. Is that what you also meant, Councilmember Arenas? Getting that clarity for the future. So I would support giving the city flexibility in the future if, God forbid, if we had another pandemic 10 years from now, but that it give the city that flexibility to not be in the boat that we're in right now. So that's the feedback. And also I'm remiss, and I thank some organizations that came out against a rushed process for strong mayor and an unelected 2-year term. But I'd also like to thank the Black Kitchen Cabinet and the Asian Law Alliance for their work on that to oppose the previous rush system versus what's on the motion that's on the floor right now. Thank you.
thank you. We are going to take a break at 12 o'clock for lunch, and we'll resume unless folks, otherwise we'll resume our standard time at 1:30. I just want to offer my concerns about pushing a lot of measures that don't have any common thread on the same ballot. The issue relating to census and redistricting is one we have to resolve, not just because of COVID, but this has been an ongoing problem. If I could channel Terry Christensen for a moment. There's a problem in 2000 and again 2010, and enabling that commission to do its work in redistricting. That issue clearly has to do with representation. It clearly affects elections. It clearly affects voting. And I think it's important for that to be combined with this. I think it would be a big mistake to have separate, too many separate ballot measures that would cost, I think Tony indicated $629,000 a piece. So my strong suggestion would be that we would combine that with this one, since they do have to do all with moving dates around to address issues of representation, voting, and elections. Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to the staff that put in the work during this July. I think it's been a much busier July than had been expected, and to our community members that have stayed diligent, in the organizations as well that have pressed on this issue. I think certainly, right, I am pleased with where the conversation is going today, based on the late memo from the mayor, and it really sort of resembles what I was asking for back in a memo I issued on June 24th when this first came in front of the initial public body, which was our Rules Committee, for discussion. And this was my initial indication, was to slow down. And I know I asked the Rules Committee the question, what was the rush? And certainly for me, right, that has been an ongoing issue. We heard that through a large debate of nearly 12 hours on this one item from many community members. Even at that early stage, a lot of organizations that were asking for the same thing, and certainly nearly half the council. And ultimately, that's now what we're discussing, and so I'm certainly pleased with the outcome of where this conversation has led. I think I wish could have had this discussion back June 30th and July 1st. But nevertheless, I think it was. I was happy to see the shift in our mayor's mindset on how we should proceed. Also, the conversation that we've had today in regards to how to move forward. I do feel words matter, and so I appreciate the back and forth dialogue from my colleagues. I apologize to our community members. I even felt as though it was a bit like watching 3 Cup Monty to try and follow what was happening with the amendment and the recommendation and the friendly amendments. But I do think that words matter, and we don't want to be too prescriptive, but we need to certainly be clear on what it is that we want this commission to look into. But there's a difference between, providing a direction that makes it seem as though the only outcome will be going to the ballot with particular amendments versus suggestions for what the commission should look into, and then ultimately not knowing if we'll go to a ballot or not, or what we will go to a ballot with. And I think that we've come to that place in regards to allowing all the language that has been presented by both the mayor, the vice mayor, Councilmember Esparza and Carrasco and Arenas to put that together to ensure that this commission is looking at all these different elements and suggestions, and that ultimately they will come back with what they feel the council should put forth on a ballot, and then the council and the mayor can discuss that and ultimately make that decision once we've had a real thorough vetting and a true community engagement. And so I appreciate that on the motion as well. In regards to this item number 5 from Councilmember Arenas's memo, I'm looking at right now 5 different options or 5 different initiatives potentially, right? We have the IPA and the card room tax that were already on agenda for August 4th. And now we have work we've been engaged in, right, for the Planning Commission. What we are discussing here today, which has now been sort of boiled down to moving the mayor's race to the presidential cycle. And then the redistricting, which none of us expected that we were going to be discussing that due to the census. So 5 different potentially initiatives, and certainly I don't want to be driven by the funding that we may or may not have. We know some of these have to go to this ballot this November. Funding, has to be an issue, but it shouldn't drive our decision. But I do think that there is a way to figure out how we can combine some of these and not also confuse the voters with too much on the ballot, because also 5 different initiatives could be challenging. And so I would actually agree that I want to give staff some leeway here to be able to help decide what might go together. Initially, if we were going to have the strong mayor initiative language and moving the mayor's race, an extension of 2 years for our current mayor, if we were going to have that on an initiative, I felt that should have stood on its own, because certainly that already has enough components. And additionally, it was going to have the campaign contribution restrictions. And so 4 different components on its own, I did not think needed anything else along with it. If we have now eliminated the majority of those, and we're now going to move the mayor's race, and I would agree, and why I seconded the motion. I think we need to have an election in 2022. I'm not necessarily leaning one side or another. I think I can discuss that after this item number 5 here on the 2 or the 6 year term. But in my mind, we do have 5 different initiatives that we need to combine to less than 5. And so I am curious on staff's initial response. The mayor just pointed out, I think, the same challenge as well. I don't know if staff has an answer right now, but certainly, right, you're looking for some direction. I think what I'm looking for is some of your insight on what you think actually does fit well together, and what doesn't. And so I don't know if you're prepared to answer that right now, but that might help us give you some direction on what should or should not be combined. Otherwise, I might defer to Councilmember Esparza's comments, which is that, giving you some leeway that we certainly want these to be, important standalone items, but we need to be able to find how we can package them in less than 5 different initiatives.
So as I mentioned early in this discussion, the reason we combined these 3 together, not because that was our recommendation, it was for twofold. It was clearly understanding the costs involved in doing multiple ballot measures, but then also to bring all of these items before the council at this meeting before the August the 4th. There is, some basis for the mayor's recommendation when you're changing dates and charters. You can combine the dates because that could be easily discussed in whatever information is being given to the public. But we're open to whatever proposals the council may have in combining them. Mark, I don't know if you had a chance to actually look at this point at the possible combinations, but it was simply to give the council the opportunity to discuss all 3 options today, and for you to give us direction as to what combinations you wanted us to come back with.
And maybe you could speak, or if Mark wanted to, specifically as to why maybe you would not support, if maybe that's not the case. Maybe I'm assuming here, but why you would not support adding the Planning Commission and the redistricting to, say, for instance, the IPA reforms, as Councilmember Arenas has suggested. And Mayor, happy to have you chime in after Mark as well.
I can weigh in. There's no position for me to take one way or the other. I think, as Ed mentioned, with regard to elections, it is a yes or no vote. So when you have measures that combine things, the voters don't get to pick and choose what they like and what they don't like. They either have to vote yes on the whole measure or vote no. And so that's the only real consideration. The council, when putting a measure on the ballot, is not limited to any single subject rule or anything like that.
Councilman Peralta, just offer you my thoughts, and thank you for asking. First, I think I already articulated my views about changing the date with regard to the census and redistricting. I just don't see any kind of obvious nexus to IPAs or card clubs. And I think it can really be dealt with a single sentence out of the 75 words. It could be pretty succinct. And I really don't think this is going to be in any way controversial because everybody understands what's going on right now in the world. With regard to the Planning Commission, I think it would be, look, I know budget isn't the only consideration, but it is a consideration. And I think we should ask ourselves, how critically important is it for us to have 11 commissioners rather than simply saying, let's make sure we have 7 commissioners that actually represent separate districts, that is Planning Commission districts, to ensure we have full and fair representation throughout the city and save ourselves the trouble of going to the ballot. That would be my suggestion.
And thank you. I guess there's other options as well to try to move something forward. For instance, one could be, we end up having 4 initiatives rather than 5 if we combine this Planning Commission with the redistricting and left the mayor's race independently on its own versus combining the 3 of them. Again, I was more opposed to combining anything to that initiative when it was already going to have multiple components. I'm not pressed on that anymore, but I certainly still understand the importance. These are, independent items. We're just now we've got almost too many to be bringing forward. I do think it's worth a discussion. What you just suggested, Mayor, I think it's unfortunate to not be able to move forward with a planning commission change. We've worked hard to get to that revision. And I would not necessarily want to drop that from this ballot, but I do think it's worth conversation, especially if we're going to be talking about, well, do we combine multiple items or do we maybe leave something off? I guess that's a discussion we don't necessarily have to have today. We can have that discussion on August 4th as well, giving people time to talk about that. If we want to, if staff wants to come back with sort of a mix and says, here's the 5 different items and here's, a way that we can combine a couple of them. Yet if you dropped off one or, and didn't add it to this ballot, it might make it less confusing. So, I would like to allow some flexibility to staff, and I am comfortable. I do understand, Mayor, your point on the nexus of the IPA. I think that, yes, I would agree. There's probably less of a nexus with the IPA and the planning or the redistricting than there is with moving the mayor's race. But I think at the end of the day, they all sort of could stand on their own. And so we have to find out what we think should be a standalone item. And so I'm comfortable with either one. I'm comfortable if we combine the 2 with the IPA, or if we did combine them with moving the mayor's race. I know that doesn't give staff any of the direction that or any concise direction that they're looking for. So maybe that's up for more debate here this afternoon. So I'll leave that at the moment. And then the last item was on this either is it a 2-year or a 6-year term in 2022. I echo Councilmember Esparza's comments, and I think that the response from our community echoes this as well, that they want to see an election in 2022. It's important to them what they had voted on for the term of our mayor, and that holds true, and that there is an election in 2022. Whether it is 2 years or 6 years, I think I'm indifferent. I think there's an argument to be had, for either one. I think that the 6-year term provides one advantage, which is the opportunity for us to actually discuss what the impact may be on the odd-numbered districts, which at this point now we are directing that conversation to this Charter Revision Commission to be able to determine, do we want to, move those odd-numbered districts as well? One of the previous suggestions was, do we want to swap the even and odd-numbered districts? But the reality is, I think, is what we have been discussing is what will the impact be on the odd-numbered districts if we do move the mayor's race to the presidential cycle. I think a 6-year term gives a little bit more leeway to kind of figure that out, to take some recommendations from the Charter Revision Commission, and then to come back in 2028 and determine what we might do with everything. But at the same time, I would agree that, as you're moving forward, if we want to get to a presidential election cycle for a mayor as soon as possible, that is 2024. And the way to do that is a short 2-year term. And I think, Councilmember Arenas' memo sort of offers up both, which is why I was comfortable with both. I think they both have advantages and disadvantages to them. So I am comfortable with both. I think we do need to give a direction here today. I won't land on either one. I know that Councilmember Esparza said that she might lean more towards the 2-year term. I don't think she asked for a friendly amendment. Maybe somebody will, and before we get to a vote here, I think we have to, obviously, no matter what. But I won't make a suggestion on that either. Those are my comments for now, and I appreciate that. Thanks.
Councilmember Peralta, I do want to call the question to some extent to save Mark Vanny some sleepless nights next week. I do think we need to make some basic direction about how we're going to try to consolidate measures because, Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got a deadline after Tuesday's vote of what it would be Thursday?
Correct. August the 7th is the last date to send any ballot measures to the Registrar of Voters. And so we will need to have the council approve on the 4th. Now, it is possible to have maybe another date, but we're really hoping that by the 4th, we will have the final version of the ballot measures so that we can make the deadline and make certain that these get on the ballot in November.
So in other words, I do need to have everything written out. So we approve exactly what is written, what goes on
On
the
the
ballot.
4th, we need to have all of the language specifically stated so that we can then put in a final form and have the city clerk deliver it to the county registrar of voters by the 7th of August.
Okay, thank you. So I just offer that for the council's consideration. Councilmember Foley, you've been very patient. It's now 11:57. Do you want to speak or take a break and come back?
I have to do my rehab, so I'm happy to take a break now and come back and talk when we get back from lunch.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Let's take our break now and we'll resume this afternoon. The meeting's in recess. Thank you.